and also co-convener with Michael Montgomery, who I think I thought I saw his name pop up on this call. There he is. Sorry, Michael, there you are. For the Engaging Racial Justice Working Group in the Diocese of Oregon. We also have Madeline Moore here, who's part of our leadership team. And I don't know if Melissa Bird is here. She's the fourth person of our leadership team. And we would like to welcome you all to the second of these of the speaker series this spring. And we are delighted to have Dr. Sandra Montes with us this evening. I'm going to let Sandra introduce herself, and then she's going to lead us in a little exercise, and then we'll have some conversation and questions. So glad to have you all here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to see some familiar faces and definitely see some people that I don't know. So I'm very grateful to be here, to be invited. I would like to do a couple of exercises. The first one is Eric Law created this, who am I? So I'm just gonna ask you some questions and for you to just, think about them. Just who am I? When you see me, who do you think I am? All right, so let any ideas that you have come to the surface. Don't, screen what you think. Just let your imagination go. Just let your thoughts go. Because, once you've already said it, I shouldn't think that of her, you've already thought it. So it's okay. If you saw me for the first time or someone who looks like me, where would you think I'm from? What language do I speak? Where's my accent from? Where do you think I grew up? What kind of situation do you think I grew up in? And what kind of family situation am I in now? Where do I live? Do I own a home, a house? Do I live with people? Do I rent? What kind of education do you think I have? I know you heard, the little title, but what did I study? If I went to college, what would have been my major? What was my first full-time job? What do I do for a living now? If I ever travel, where have I been in my travels? Do I even have a passport? Anything else that pops in your mind, just think about those things. And this is not to make judgments about what you think about me. Looking at me, there's absolutely no way to know that much about me, right? All those questions that I had. And we all make assumptions about people that we meet. Sometimes they are correct and sometimes they are not correct. I also have assumptions about you. Where did these assumptions come from? And how can I keep these assumptions in check so that when I meet you, I can see who you really are, not who I think you should be? So let me answer these questions, or at least a lot of them. I am Sandra Montes. I was born in Peru, and I grew up in Guatemala and the Valley of Texas, in McAllen and Harlingen, and later in Houston, Texas. I have a house in Sugar Land, Texas, and I am here now in Union Theological Seminary. I am the Dean of Chapel here in New York City. I have a 2-bedroom apartment at Union, so I don't own it, but I don't have to pay anything for it. So I'm very grateful to have, it's not very big as y'all can imagine in New York City, but it's big enough. And it's so nice to be here. I have a dog. I don't think I asked y'all if y'all thought I would have one. I speak English and Spanish, and then just kind of dabble in Italian and French. I grew up, like I said, in Peru and Guatemala and Texas. My parents are still together, and they're not Roman Catholic, and neither am I. I'm not Mexican, as you can see now. I have my hair, my natural color is blue, but right now it's pink. Just kidding. And I am divorced. I live alone with my dog, and sometimes I live with my son, who is right now, he's in Montreal. That's where he's studying his doctorate. I got my doctorate in Houston. My major was Spanish when I was, young, because I felt a calling into the Episcopal Church. I felt a calling into the priesthood. But Texas at that time, when I was 24, was not ready for me. As a matter of fact, the first Latina to have grown up in Texas in an all Latino parish is my niece-in-law that was ordained last year. So that's how long since I was 24. So almost 30 years later, they were finally ready for a Latina to become a priest in the Episcopal Church in Texas. So I thought Spanish would be easy, but it wasn't, because all of you English majors know that it's the same exact thing except in Spanish. And since I had been here for a while, Padre Beto can tell y'all, and Padre Roberto, when I was speaking Spanish to our group in Spanish, there were words that I kept messing up with because, I forget sometimes either the English or the Spanish. My first full-time job, I think I worked in the church, but the amnesty. We had a lot of people that came across the border, and so we had this amnesty in the 80s to help people have documents and then become citizens. And again, what I do now is I work as the Dean of Chapel. When I'm not traveling, I love to travel. One of my favorite places to go is Cuba. I love going to their beaches. I love the beach. So anytime there's a beach, I want to be there. But of course, I haven't been traveling much right now, as you can imagine, because of COVID. I do have to travel from Houston to New York. I have a great niece that was just born. So as y'all can imagine, I want to be in Houston as often as possible. So here, as the Dean of Chapel, one of the things that I do is plan liturgy and rituals and prayers, and from all different cultures and all different languages and all different religions, which is something that I enjoy a lot. As an Episcopalian, I love that I can do that and not feel guilty about it, because the Episcopal Church is really cool that way. The Episcopal Church will not judge you for dabbling into other cultures and religions, etc. So I don't know why we're so not willing to do that in our own congregations throughout the Episcopal Church. But I'm going to stop right there, and I'm just going to ask Jean if you have questions or prompts for me to, just let me know, because I think I forgot a couple of questions already.
Well, no, so you just made a really interesting point. I think that there's this sort of big tent kind of idea, at least theologically and intellectually, that we have in the Episcopal Church, of being able to sort of dabble in other cultures and other religions and invite all those as part of the conversation. And yet your observation that we have a hard time doing that in the parishes. And I'd love to hear where you think that comes from, or how that has shown up in your experience.
Yeah, so in my experience throughout the church and throughout the world, in the Episcopal Church, and I grew up evangelical, so I also have seen that there, was actually very apparent this week. On Tuesday, I believe, or Monday, we had this chapel here at Union, and the person that was invited was this Latino musician. And so there's this song that we have, un corito, as we call it in Spanish, and the tune goes, and but he changed it to be He added a whole measure because it sounded more Western that way. So for me, that was something that really, I'll be honest, it angered me because I thought it's such a beautiful corito song in Spanish, and it doesn't have a lot of words, honestly. He could have taught it in Spanish exactly how we know it from our home countries, but he decided to add something different so that it would be easier, more palatable for the English speakers. And as most seminaries in the church in excuse me, in the United States, it is filled with white people. So even though this is not an Episcopal seminary, but it is still, the majority of people that come here are white. So I just, and obviously his church is also majority white. And I just thought, and I challenged him to, I asked him, why did you change it? It's such a beautiful tune. And he just looked at me like, oh, well, it just depends on where I'm at, what I change. But I just, I didn't have a lot of time to go into it with him. But that's what I've seen, unfortunately, in our churches. We want to make people comfortable instead of challenging us to grow. The Bible never says make people comfortable. I say this all the time. The Bible says to comfort people, not to make us comfortable. And I think one of the things that those of us people of color, or the other, whatever the other may be in your context, we are usually the uncomfortable people. And we grow a lot and we suffer a lot because we try to apaciguar. You see, I wish somebody else could translate that for me. We try to have everybody just kind of be comfortable, to be happy, to, don't get angry. You're going to be okay. And I don't like that. And, if you know me, you know that I talk a lot about against that in the Episcopal Church.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think there's something particular about music, especially, that seems to provoke that kind of like, oh no, that's not what we do, or that's not from our hymnal, or that there's something particular to music that often creates a lot of emotion or reactions in folks?
Well, in the Episcopal Church, what I have seen, including in seminaries, Episcopal seminaries, is for some unknown reason, Episcopalians are so, we idolize the Book of Common Prayer and the hymnal 1982. That is something that I have seen all over the place. So because of that, anything that will change that freaks us out. And I don't know what it is. I know part of it is that we want to belong, right? So all of us are looking to belong. That is something that as humans, that's what we want. We want to be loved. We want to belong. We want to be cared for. So maybe that's why we are so, just like, I don't know. I don't even know what word to use, that we do not want that to change. So that's what I have seen. So whenever I challenge people, because, one of the questions that I ask is, show me how many Episcopalians wrote the songs that we have in the hymnal 1982. And when I'm in places, I say, I'm waiting. And people will try to name somebody that they think was Anglican. And I'm like, I didn't say Anglican. Episcopalian. And show me the tunes that were written for God, or are they folk songs that people have added, what's it called, sacred lyrics to? Because if we're honest, let's look at our hymnal. We can go through it right now, and I will challenge everyone to see how many Episcopalians are in there. And if there aren't, then why are we so unwilling to let that go? And so for me, there's a lot of reasons that I have, of course, all the research that I've done. There's, like, again, the belonging, the power struggle, white supremacy that still goes rampant in all of our dioceses. Just that unwillingness to change. I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to learn new things, and that's also a very funny thing to me, because when you go to Episcopal churches, you know, you see the hymnal, right? It has all of the music in there, and people act as though they all know how to read music, right? So they opened it up and then they're singing all this stuff. Then I give them a piece of music that has maybe 3 lines with very basic notes, and y'all can't read it. So I'm like, okay, I don't understand what happened here. You know, if supposedly we all know how to read music, why can't we read a Spanish song that has 3 different notes, or, you know, or maybe 5 even? Why is it that we are not doing that? So I'm like, either y'all are lying that you know how to read music, or you don't want to change at all. You know, so it's so I don't know, it's that ownership. It's that if you take this away from me, I will no longer have the power. I will no longer belong here. You're gonna want to change me. And you know, the thing is, I think a lot of us are just so happy being not leaving where we are. We're so happy to just be there instead of thinking, I want to live there. I want to help others find this that I have found in Jesus, in God, in the Episcopal Church. Let me show you this. But when I'm not willing to let go of things, then that thing is what is, you know, earlier we were just talking about that. You have to let go of all of those things that are holding you back. And I feel like that is one of them. So Father Beto, I know you have a question or a comment.
Yes, it's with the hymns, sometimes we, in the Episcopal Church, we said because they reflect our theology behind in the hymns.
Yeah.
But when we don't accept another hymn, you're with the same argument, you're not accepting the theology. So which it's more more difficult for me to accept, to understand why. If it's for music, I understand, okay, you don't like that style of music, fine. But if the argument is theology, so why they have to discard theology when many don't even know exactly what it is. And many, I honestly, sometimes I don't think they really know the Episcopal theology. I mean, we're still debating in the Episcopal theology. So I think we have to go deeper in that. It's not just the music, not just the lyrics, but it's something else.
Yeah, I agree completely. One of the things that I also hear a lot of criticism against contemporary Christian music, you know, and they'll say like, no, that's not good. We don't want to do that here. That's, you know, dumb or whatever. And I'm like, most of those songs come directly from the Bible. Are you saying the Bible is also not right? Like a Bible verse that all of us will say together, yet no, let's not sing it because that's contemporary, that's not good, that's not Christian. And again, I challenge y'all again to look at the hymnal and tell me how many were sacred music before they had the sacred lyrics, you know? And if we're gonna say that, that's fine. I agree that for me, all music is sacred. For me, all lyrics are sacred, all, literally all, because we are sacred, right? But so, you know, we can go into this a lot more, but you know, it's a very long discussion.
I think Ernestine, you have your hand up?
Yes. I do.
Good.
Okay, I was gonna say you're playing my song because this is one of my biggest issues in the Episcopal Church, and well, in most of the churches that I've been a part of, is the lack of the ability to sing music in particular. And we were at the all governing bodies retreat about a week ago, so a little over a week ago, and we were talking about music, and we were talking about lift every voice and sing. And I heard something that I hear a lot. Well, it's so hard to sing. God. And my immediate response was, you think the 1982 hymnal is easy for people like me to sing? But guess what?
Right.
We learned it.
Yes.
And you can learn it too if you have the desire to make people feel welcome.
That's right.
And to make people feel a part of.
That's right.
So I mean, I even hear this from organists. Oh, we can't play that music. Excuse me. Are you a musician?
Yes, thank you.
And so it's always something that you have to you have to butt up against it. You have to resist the urge to have people put you in a box or put music in a box. Like you say, it's all sacred.
Right.
It's
right.
just our willingness to be able to say, I welcome something different. I welcome a change, because I'm telling you, they have about 6 different melodies for all the hymns in the 1982 hymnals, and most of them sound like dirges.
Well, and you know, Ernestine, I'm going to say this. I mean, the same thing, like, or I think Beto was also saying, I don't like a lot of the hymns that are in 1982, but you know what? I'm there and I sing them. You know, I could just turn around and, you know, put my back to it, but I'm not 12 years old. I'm not 2, y'all. I am a 51-year-old woman. I'm not going to grab my toys and go home. I'm not. I'm a mature person who loves Jesus and loves people. So I'm not going to do that. I'm also going to help you feel welcome. If I invited y'all to my house and you hated rap, am I going to play just rap? No. I'm going to ask you, what kind of music do you want? You know, are you vegan? Are you vegetarian, etc.? I'm going to try to help you feel welcome in my home. The church is our home. And how dare we tell people they are not allowed in there? You know, because no, you know, okay, fine, you're vegetarian. Well, I'm going to only have meat dishes. So if you want to come, all right, go ahead and come. No, that's not what Jesus does. That's not what Jesus asks for. Alan. Hi.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you.
Is your daughter
By the
around?
way, my daughter she's about to go to bed. My husband is putting her to bed. But anyway, if a lot of people don't know about you, is that you have a beautiful voice. I just want to say that. But I think that a lot of things that you touch on really resonates with me, because this is something I've been trying to figure out. How do we dismantle white supremacy in our liturgy, but also decolonize our liturgy in the Episcopal Church? And every time when I raise up the question about decolonizing our liturgy, it's like people just looked at me that I was weird and that I was crazy. But I think that I think it's so systemic in our culture in the Episcopal Church. Just look at all our music directors across the Episcopal Church. Majority of them came from a few very renowned Anglo-centric music schools, and that's how they have been taught. And we have not learned how to expand our repertoire. A couple of weeks ago, I was in Atlanta for the SEEP conference, and we have a closing evensong, and at All Saints. I tell you, that service really enriched me so much that I felt like as if I attended church for the whole year, that I don't have to go to church anymore. It was a festival of songs with jazz and spiritual, with organs and a whole live jazz band. And it was very well done, very dignified within the evensong context. And we have the honor of having the Senator Raphael Warnock preach on the pulpit. The whole house was on fire, and I'll be happy to share the link of the recording on the chat with all of you. You can watch what a multicultural worship can look like in the Episcopal Church. It's because of our lack of imagination.
Now, I will ask you, I'm going to challenge one thing though, Alan. I know it was Theodicy. Did they have any people of color in their band? Because I know Theodicy is all white. Sometimes they rent a couple of people that are Black, an all white jazz band. So for me, and I do this all the time because I love them, they're my friends, but I'm like, look, y'all, you know, especially if you are in a place where there's a bunch of people of color who are jazz musicians, why do we have to bring the same band that goes everywhere, that is well known, that is all white? You know, so that's my challenge all the time, which people don't like, and I'm okay with that, but you know what I mean? So I'm just challenging that, you know, because to me, it's very
there was some diversity in the band, which I'm glad to say. But yeah, I definitely hear your point. So thank you for indulging me.
And I was going to say, I thought Tony Phipps has been trying to get her hand up, but it looks like she figured it out. So we can go. Barb, you wanted to go next?
Sure. You know, I think I wanted to touch on a point that Alan made about music canons, how they're the kind of music that they learn. But I also think that the issue of music is bigger than even the church, because so many of us were raised to think that you have to have a certain kind of talent for music. You have to have there wasn't the same focus on music education in the schools, not a broad experience. And one of the things that I see that has, I've kind of opened my mind is that not all African-American music is spirituals. I mean, there's a man I know who has been recording the music created by nomadic people in Africa, all over Africa. It doesn't sound like a lot of the spirituals. It has a distinct sound. But I mean, there's also a lot of African Americans who love classical music and who are composers, and they're not featured. So I think we have to think really carefully, not just to say we're going to add spirituals. We have to think broadly. Not just vocal music. There's a lot of instrumental music that's also beautiful. So, I mean, for example, like our church is funded, I think offered a scholarship for a person of color to compose. And some of the music, honestly, like that, the husband of our music canon is married to, his music is really dissonant to me. I have a hard time hearing it, but he's a world famous composer and he's Korean. So I think we just have to be careful in how we talk about the music and understand. I sing, I think of our dean who loves everyone singing together. To him, it's like a prayer, one voice. And I try to remind myself of that when I'm standing next to two people who can't keep a tune, but they love to sing. So I'm trying to think more widely about how we bring music in.
Mhm.
Thanks,
Thank
Barb. Father Roberto?
Oh, finally got the mute. My experience when these things has been done when I work in Anglo churches as a Latino, they do 1 or 2 songs in Spanish a year, and they had the quota. And it has to be something that they have the English translation available to them. And I remember I had to jump to so many hoops and loops sometimes to get 1 or 2 pieces. Then at one point you just get tired and give up and go like, why bother? The other part has been done when we work in diocesan wide. The other reasons has been sometimes that, we don't feel qualified to include music of that nature. And it's upsetting to me because, going to the question that you asked, God in his man's wisdom, she thought that would be a good idea to send a white guy who looked like this, who happened to be Latino, to a historical African-American church. That was my very first work out of seminary. Therefore, they sent a white Latino to work in the African-American congregation. You're talking about a fish out of water. I was a fish out of water in many ways, but I learned to love the music. I met Bishop Michael Curry when he was just the rector of a church in Baltimore, because I used to go to the Jazz Vesper, and I was introduced to Duke Ellington music when I was in Philadelphia, my first vicarage. And that variety of the African-American music, who is an incredible amount of music, from classic to jazz to spiritual to blues. And we sometimes have a really hard time get out of comfort zone. We don't want to be pushed out of comfort zone. We come to church to be comfort.
Yep.
And feel we're in a comfort place. And the last thing we need is somebody speaking in the language and we don't stand next to me. And then asking to sing, you're pushing that envelope, not to the edge, but off the table.
And
And
I'm telling y'all, push it. Don't worry about it. We're adults, so I mean, the children will do it. Children will definitely do it. So why can't we also try?
Sister Jenny and Diane, I think your hands are raised.
Thank you. We've been attending church at the National Cathedral during most of the pandemic, and I've been delighted with the variety of music they have been doing there. And I think that would be really wonderful if it could be sort of a model for many congregations. One of the things that delighted me is some of the hymns that they do come out of my evangelical childhood. And that's been just really amazing. Blessed Assurance, Trust and Obey, that it just moves me really deeply to hear that music, but it's also done with jazz, piano, and sax. And it's wonderful. So I just want to thank the National Cathedral for giving us one model, and it certainly does not include much Hispanic music that I've seen. And there are certainly other, I'm not that familiar with Asian hymns. Anyway, that's all I need to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Tony?
Hi, so I grew up in South Texas, in fact, a little town not too far away from where Sandra was also raised. And it's predominantly Hispanic. And so when you go to church, you're part of the privileged group, if you will, because there's so many of you. You dominate the services, you dominate the music, you dominate the whole kit and caboodle. You come to Oregon, and you're not as dominant. You don't have the privilege, and so you end up falling into this category that says you are the accommodator. So you accommodate the privileged in order to allow you to even be in the church. And the way that you accommodate is that you get, the 2 o'clock in the afternoon for services, or 1 o'clock. You get the music that you want, but you got to do it on your own time. You can't do it with the privileged. It's like you're not interfering with the privilege. You as long as you don't screw with them, they're fine. Go ahead and do it. But when you have your gatherings, your meetings, your dinners, please invite us, because we kind of like that Mexican food.
That's right.
So it's the idea to me is it doesn't matter whether it's the music, whether it's the service, whether it's the time of the service, you're still put in a position of having to accommodate the privileged. And so the question for me, and the challenge has been in working with the diocese here, is how do we get the privilege to widen up, so it's not one big circle and then a little circle that just sort of touches into the big one, but you're still just a part of it. You're not part of the big circle. And part of it is we have to learn how to, what is it that we're willing to accommodate? And then get the community, the privileged community, to recognize that we're all the same, we're all the children of God, people of God. And so how do we make it one unit? So some churches have solved that by having bilingual services, because you may have people like me, who is, multi-generational in the state of Texas, whose Spanish is kind of mucho, you just sort of get along with it as well as you can. So how do you accommodate somebody like me with someone who may be first generation or just is here as an immigrant? Because what we need from services may not necessarily be the same. So we have a challenge even with us as accommodating is to accommodate. I know, like in Woodburn, which is where I kind of grew up, we had the service in Spanish, but it was in English, because that's what the folks that went to that service wanted. But then you had the other one early in the morning when my grandparents and, the viejitos and everybody who only speak Spanish wanted to go. And so it's not as cut and dried to me as, it's just the privileged and the accommodators. We got to figure out there's an in-between group, and it's how do we serve the needs? And I think we can. You serve the needs of everybody. But there has to be some give and take. And I'm hopeful that at least, with Bishop Akiyama, she seems to be interested in wanting us to really work not only with the privileged and the accommodators, but even in the accommodators, we're all emerging communities, whether you're African American, Black, you're Hispanic, whether you're Indigenous, we're all emerging in this state, in this diocese. And how do we build on that strength? Because there is strength there. And so I love hearing you talk, because you get me all fired up. But at the same time, I sort of feel a little bit of a weight and saying, dang, where do we start? How do we get this going? And so I think having the clerica, the Hispanic, listening into him earlier this evening, I was kind of going like, wow, they're facing some real issues, and how do we support them? How do we not only support them within the clerical, the Latino clerical, but get the larger community to recognize, that their churches can be so beautiful if they just open their arms and embrace. That's right. And that privilege is not really all that hot.
Yeah.
Give a little. So anyway.
I agree completely. I think where it starts is from the top, honestly. I don't know who the leaders are in your diocese, but what do they look like? Are any of them people of color? Are people of color, do we have a lot of people of color in positions of influence and power? And if not, why not? We all can do the same kind of jobs. We all have gifts, we've all been called. And I would challenge my siblings who identify as white. You got to let go of that power. You may not think you have it, but you have it. Just the fact that you can walk into a room and nobody says, oh, that's a Latina woman, or that's a Black woman, or that's an Asian man. Just you walk in and you're a woman or a man or a person. You have that privilege already. Are you working 3, 4, 5 jobs like my siblings of color? All of those things we have to think about. And are we willing to do it? And if you're not, that's totally fine, but don't pretend like you are. Just admit, I am not willing to let go of my, position or my power or my whatever, because I just don't want to. Then be honest about it. But let's not continue to pretend that we're all, in this racial reckoning, trying to do racial justice and all that stuff, but we're not really ready for that. I encourage diocese and everybody to have a group of just people who identify as white, to speak together and to be honest about what you are really wanting to do. Because hearing it, for me at least, when I have been in places where I work with white people and hearing them tell me that they do not want to speak up if something happens against me because they just don't want to speak up, I cannot deal with that. So that's why I now encourage. I used to think that we should all do it together, but I don't agree with that anymore. I think white people who identify as white, need to have their own come to Jesus moment and see, are we really wanting this for ourselves? Or do we really want this for our diocese? Because if you don't, then maybe you need to think about if this is really the religion that God is calling you to. Because in my Bible, there's not one person who identifies as white. And in my Bible, there's not one person who is my leader, who says that I need to suppress people. And, even our leader, Jesus, never wanted power, is a lay person. And, read your Bible and let's get on with that. But that's going further. Like, Tony, you were firing me up, so I better, I need to come back down. All right, Maureen.
Hi. Tony, what you said is so true, and it's not heard in our diocese. We are Pacific Northwest nice. We don't really want conflict. We want to get along. And a lot of people have never been exposed to, the multicultural liturgies that we have, and we know how much life there is to them. And so it's something so alien to our concept of what is normal. And you know, as far as seminaries go, I know that each seminary, well, most seminaries try to do a little bit of cultural, a little bit, a little bit. Well, maybe not. Okay, I've seen a little bit, but it's very small. It's very small. And I know that's one of the things with you at Union, you really are going to make a difference. But I wonder, so you make this difference at Union, and then all these seminarians go to their first post. And how do we, you know, we need to change culture. I mean, when I went to your brother's church in Texas, it's like, this is like an ideal church in many ways. But I don't know if we would ever be able to, we would want to do it. And I think a lot of people would say, well, we don't need to do a bilingual service because we don't have anybody to speak Spanish. Or, you know, they already say, well, we didn't need a wheelchair accessibility because nobody has a wheelchair that comes to church. Well, could it be because no one can get into church?
Thank you.
So I don't think we have a very good sense of things outside of ourselves. So I mean, I would say we have more unconscious privilege. But anyway, so keep on speaking up. I know you will. You don't
Yeah, I definitely will. You know, the thing, unconscious, I'm sorry. I challenge you because I love you and I know you and you're my sister. So that's why I feel comfortable enough to, say, that unconscious, I'm sorry. As soon as the internet came up, none of us are we do not have the excuse to be unconscious anymore. We know what's going on. And about that nice thing, I'm sorry, but it's also, I dated a white man for 10 years and I love him. He's still one of my best friends. And it took him a long time to understand this Latina wanting to confront everything that happened about race and everything. I mean, because he was also super polite, never wanted to talk about certain things. And I was like, what, how can we live in this world and be like that and fake? This is fake. It's not real. And as Christians, how can we continue to do that? Again, when we believe in Jesus, when we believe in the power of God, how can we remain with our blinders on? Remember the story of Saul who became Paul. His scales came off of his eyes. Y'all scales have come off of your eyes. I am certain of it. And if you say no, I'm going to challenge each of you, because on that fateful day when George Floyd was lynched, all of y'all said, oh, wow, we're awake. This is a racial awakening. Look at what's happening in our world. So let's, I'm going to pretend that that's when y'all heard anything about racism. Because if we're honest, it has been a lot longer than that.
Oh, yeah, sure, of course.
Many of us have been in the struggle, but a lot of people pretended like, oh, no, that was the biggest thing that happened. Oh my God, we need to do something about it. We didn't. It is still going on. We didn't do it in our churches. We continue to remain putting people, saying, oh, we don't have any people of color around us. Look around you. You cannot say that anymore. Who does who washes? I don't know. If you have people that clean your houses, who does that? Who does your yards? Who works in the Starbucks? Who works, in restaurants behind, doing, the food and the prep. So please, let's stop this lie of that we do not have people of color around us. You don't have to do a bilingual service. You can do a service to praise Jesus in different languages. You can do a service to praise Jesus in different cultures. You can do a service in silence to praise God. We can do this. We don't want to, like you said, Maureen, you said, well, people don't, can't, but you rectified it and said, we don't want to. People don't want to. It is so easy. Trust me, it is so easy to remain where I'm at. I love, when I have a dog, I have to walk her every 3 hours because, she loves to see the rats. And so she wants to go out all the time here in New York City. So I have to, I don't want to put on my boots and my scarf and my blah, 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 blah. I don't like to do that. I would love to just be in my room and just go like, look, just walk around. But I'm doing that. Why? Because I love her. So if she is an animal and I love her, how can I not love my sibling who needs to hear that they are loved unconditionally, exactly where they're at, and God will go there with them? You know, I have to be able to do that. So thank you, Barbara, who says we white people can turn away from racism because we have the privilege to. That's right. A lot of you don't ever have to talk about it if you don't want to. You know, I don't have that option. You know, Padre Roberto, you may call yourself white, but as soon as you start talking, we know you're not white. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter. And you know you love to talk.
Yeah.
So, you know, so he loves to talk. So I know that he's gonna, you know, he's gonna give himself away, right?
Yeah. I call the deceiver. I
Yes.
look white, but I am not white.
Privilege is when you can walk away from a broken system. That's right. And we do that every single time we meet as Episcopalians. You know, the fact that we have this religion, this denomination that actually says how open we are, if we lived into that, it would be amazing. We wouldn't be quote unquote dying. We would be thriving. You know, we are children. I say this all the time. We are children of the resurrection. So if we allow our whiteness to die, we're going to resurrect stronger. We, you know, if we really believe in what we teach, those of you people of color, if you really believe what you teach, then you would know that God is never going to leave us, that God will definitely take us from glory to glory. There's so much that we know that we have. Allie, you had your hand up. I know the time is running, but you know, I would love to hear you.
Oh, I did, but it was for comment on the music, so I was way later. But
oh, that's fine. That's fine.
It's well, I think it also kind of is a funny example of especially white Episcopalians like inching towards a change, but really like retreating almost immediately back to what is familiar, which I've had the privilege of being able to be at a lot of large Episcopal events in my time, and there's nothing quite like the whiplash of music from getting really involved, and I know Sandra, I've seen you experience it too, of a song that is, you know, just full of life and everything, and then the next minute it's like the Phantom of the Opera, and there's like this huge change, and it's almost as if that emotion was like, nope, that was too much, we have to retreat back. And I know that that's something that I am not a musical person. It is not something that I am part of, or don't sing, don't any of that. But even that, I'm like, wow, okay, that was a big shift. And I think that that's representative of a lot of things that especially cradle white Episcopalians experience. So it's like, we could do it, but then immediately, if we enjoy this work or if we enjoy that change, you have to retreat almost immediately back to what is that familiar. And in my opinion, I think the 1982 prayer book is kind of boring, but that's just me.
Thank you. And you know, the thing is, like, there's nothing wrong with it. For me, I am totally for singing Montaña on the organ and then going to a guitar, what's it called, classical piece. And then, you know, standing up. Now, y'all know that you need to stand up and leave everything and stop doing everything when Lift Every Voice and Sing is sung, correct? If you don't know that, you better know it. You do not move. You do not, it's not a procession. It is, you stand and you stay where you're at when you sing that song. Just FYI, if you didn't know it, now you do. But, you know, we can have those in any service. There is nothing wrong with people, like you said, doing that whiplash of, oh my God, that was just all these congas there. And oh my God, now it's the organ. There's nothing wrong with that, because guess what? I may enjoy this one with all the congas. You may enjoy this one with the classical music. As a matter of fact, you don't even have to go that far. My son and I have very different musical tastes. He does not want to do anything contemporary. He does not like to do, anything Latino. He loves classical music, and he will argue with you the whole day long, telling you which songs are really sacred music, which is sacred, because he studies that, So, but that's just the beauty of family, the beauty of being in a Christian family, that we can do that. We can have all of different songs. There's nowhere, I don't think, now y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anywhere in the Book of Common Prayer or in the what's it called, in the canons, where it says you have to do this genre the whole service long, or you have to sing only from this one, what's it called, this one, what is that called, the whole like the Eucharist prayer or whatever, I don't think that's anywhere. So be free with that. It may seem really weird at first, but it gets better. Everything that we have ever done in our life has taken us time to learn. Everything that now we hold on to, we had to learn it first. Trust me. Madeline.
Yeah, you actually may have just touched on it when you mentioned the Eucharist prayer, but I was wondering if you would like to talk just a little bit about the liturgy as well as the music.
Yeah, so again, thank you. So the liturgy, again, I've always, when I grew up, I'm growing up as Episcopalian. Of course, I question everything. I criticize everything, but there is something about being like in Cuba on a Sunday and knowing at this moment, most of us would be having Eucharist. Most of us would be giving each other the peace, or being in Rome and knowing, at this moment right now, most of us are singing the Gloria, or most of us, just knowing that liturgy, that we have this liturgical sense to our denomination, our religion is beautiful and comforting, right? But again, yes, the Book of Common Prayer gives us rubrics, but other than that, we can create prayers, we can, add flair. One of the things that I know, and I got a lot of people very angry with me. I posted this, I don't know, some years ago, where I said, most of my musician friends are gay males that I see in the clubs, in other places doing all this other kind of music, but in church, they are like, no, it's only, the hymnal 1982, only the choir sings these, what is that song called when nobody else gets to sing but them?
Oh, the cantor,
But there's that, that song that we're not allowed to sing, only they can sing. Anyway, it escapes me. The word escapes me.
I'm the priest, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
So there's this one, whatever it's called.
Oh,
right?
the Exalted. The Exalted?
No, the anthem. It's called
anthem. Okay, whatever. Anyway.
Anthem, yes. Which, it doesn't even make sense, right? Because anthem, doesn't that just mean song? Because I've asked, like, why doesn't anybody else get to sing? But anyway, so, I already forgot what I was going to say about that.
Sorry, Sandra.
But at the same time, like, we could have those anthems that be something else. But anyway, just anything can meet, we can add and take away. And so my friends, and I challenge them all the time, because I'm like, look, we're at the club here, at a gay club, singing to all these really cute, cool music. We're in, what's it called? Other countries in Latin America, and y'all are over there drinking your, margarita, singing songs in Spanish. And yet you go back on Sunday and it has to be like this. Why? When were we told, and I know we have been told this, but when were we told, and when did we start believing that our self cannot be our church self?
Oh, that's big.
What happened? What happened to us? When did we believe the lie that I am not who I am as an Episcopalian? What you see is what you get. I have cussed in church. I have been angry and happy and cried and danced, and just like you will see me here at home. I have even taken Chunky to a lot of services throughout the Episcopal Church, my dog. And it's because I do believe that, yeah, exactly, Maureen. That's a lot of the songs in the hymnal are, drinking songs, are, songs that were not quote unquote sacred hymns, right? But anyway, yeah. So for me, I don't understand why we have to have two separate lives. One of my friends told me once, you know, I am different at work and I'm different with you and I'm different with some friends and I'm different. And I'm like, why? That's so exhausting. I can't do it. Now, mind you, in front of my parents, at one time, I used to not cuss or talk about sex. Now I'm like, I'm 51, guys. I don't have time to, say I can't talk about this with y'all. But I do. And so for me, let's be ourselves anywhere we're at. Yes, and you're right. And I think it's not only in the Anglican system, Barbara, but it's everywhere. I know I have traditions that I don't want to let go of. So I think it has to start with me, right? I have to start with, okay, what is it that I'm holding on to so that I can understand somebody else who doesn't want to let go of that.
And I will
Right.
also challenge the Anglican thing, because I will mention, I don't know if anyone's been to Holy Trinity Brompton in London. That's a full-on charismatic service with a praise band. That is the biggest Anglican church in the world, or at least in the, I don't know, the Western Hemisphere. And it is not. In fact, sometimes I feel like we in the Episcopal Church, it's like we inherited our grandmother's silver and we're still using it. But you go to England and there's a lot more going on than you might expect. Yes, there are sleepy little Anglican churches in, country parishes that probably look very similar to ours. But there's a lot more diversity even within the Anglican tradition than we allow ourselves to explore, I think,
Well,
What I said though doesn't assume that there aren't those outliers, but
No, I know, and I'm not calling you out, Barb. I'm just saying that was a eye-opening thing for me. I was like, wait, I was like, how come I didn't know about this? This is I didn't know this was an Anglican church. It felt like my brother's evangelical church in Houston. It felt exactly like that.
Well, isn't most also isn't Africa one of the largest Anglican communities? And I mean, honey, that is all. I mean, I'm sure their music is amazing. I have never been there,
right.
So I don't know. But that's you said something, and I'm trying to remember. You started. I forgot already.
Well, and I will say, and thank you. And Holy Trinity Brompton, that service was the most diverse service I've ever been to in an Anglican church in my life. Racially, gender, there's a word I can't think of because it's 8:30 and I'm going to fall asleep, but across generations, it was just, so I think it's, there's a lot of richness out there. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. I knew this was going to be amazing. I was talking about you the other day and I said, oh, you're going to have to hold on to your hats. And I'm like, where did that come from? Because that's the dumbest expression I've ever used. But basically, it's just been great to have you here and sharing all your energy and challenges. And I think that call to us to really think about those of us who identify as white, we have to show up, and be willing to give up the power that we have. Yeah, absolutely.
And now remember that we also have power, people of color that are here. We have a lot of power. It's just, sometimes we just have to remind other people that we have a lot of power. If we actually started using and abusing our power as much as it has been abused and used against us, honey, that's when you have to hold on to your hats.
Right.
Thank y'all so much for the invitation. I am so grateful to be with y'all. Please look me up if you want. Please pray for me as I will pray for y'all. Again, thank you so much for this conversation.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank y'all. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.